Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, where longtime strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt explores everything from the art of coaching, improving performance, sports nutrition, and mental training. Now, welcome your host, Coach Tommy Moffitt.
Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, and I'm your host, Tommy Moffitt. If you're listening for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends. For more information about the Moffitt Method speed, strength, and conditioning programs, please visit our website, themoffittmethod.fit, or email us at info@themoffittmethod.fit. Our incredible guest today is Dr. Matthew Frakes. Dr. Frakes is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, with a wide range of experiences in sports nutrition, strength and conditioning, the private sector, and healthcare. A native of Columbus, Ohio, Dr. Frakes works as the Assistant Athletic Director of Sports Nutrition and Director of Football Performance Nutrition at Louisiana State University. As Assistant Athletic Director for Sports Nutrition, Dr. Frakes leads the strategic nutrition direction for the football program while supporting the performance nutrition department's oversight for all student athletes on campus. His passion includes supporting diversity and inclusion initiatives, community outreach, and enhancing athletic performance through evidence-based research and practice-based evidence. As a former Division I collegiate athlete, his interests include building upon a sports nutrition and clinical nutrition background and focusing on the impact of nutrition and dietary intake on the recovery rate of sports-related concussions. His mission is to develop and educate athletes for performance, recovery, and longevity through 4 pillars of performance nutrition excellence: choices, consistency, preparation, and timing. Welcome to the podcast, Doc.
Man, how you doing, Coach Moffitt? This is an honor, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And this is funny because you're just right down the road. We could have probably met personally, but it's going to be great. So I know everything's going there, man. Y'all are flying high right now. So good luck this weekend against Texas A&M.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you. Let's conclude this season on a positive note.
Yes, amen to that. All right, so let's get started, man. I just want to ask you, first question off the list is, what led you to a career in sports nutrition?
Honestly, it's very simple. It's nothing elaborate at all. I love food. Food loves me. I love sports. I just knew after I did my clinical rotations that, I got to stay in athletics. I got to stay in sports because that's just who I am, you know? Yeah. So,
cool.
And I fell into it by accident.
Yeah. All right. So why did you get certified in strength and conditioning?
Just more so I can be able to have a conversation, understand the perspective that you're coming from. So when I'm supporting everybody, so that's my job as a support staff. It's not just to support the student athletes, but also to support the staff as well. Just so that way I can make sure that whatever angle they're coming from, how can I build my philosophy or build my services around what they're trying to get done and establish and execute.
Yeah. So it's been a while ago, but I was talking to Paul Jackson,
Coach Jack.
P. Jack. So I was talking to Paul, and he was talking about, you and how good a job that you were doing for them at Ole Miss. And there's a lot of responsibilities that someone in your position has that goes beyond dietetics and nutrition sometimes, because you really got to get down to the nitty gritty with kids. So do you think being a male and having a background in strength and conditioning and athletics helps you when working with collegiate football players?
100%. 100%. And I say that because it's one thing to, establish what you're trying to do based upon, theory, based upon what's being educated to you, and based upon just how you're trying to get a feel for what they're trying to experience. But when you experience it and have some anecdotal evidence of what you're trying to have exposure to from your failures and from your successes, and just understanding their day-to-day stress, that's another thing. So I always try to bring myself to, not from what I experienced, but also literally, how are they truly walking right now? How are they feeling right now? What are they doing day to day right now? And I just go back to what I had to go through, and how I was training hard and having to, to have success and also perform with everything on top of family situations, on top of you trying to understand the schemes, trying to study the playbook, trying to study the team, trying to study film, and then also training hard. Yeah. So physically you're beat from practice and from training as well. So you're just trying to understand that from that perspective, and trying to help these guys and guide these guys throughout those situations and coach them throughout that process.
Yeah, there's so many moving parts in a collegiate athlete's life, especially in the SEC, in the Western Division, and at LSU. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot more that goes on a daily basis that even, some coaches realize. I mean, there's a lot that these young men have to go through. All right, so since we're talking food, and I know that you have some experience with the local cuisine because of your time that you were in Lafayette. Now, this is a serious question. What's your favorite food here in the South, or your favorite dish? And what about your favorite restaurant in Baton Rouge? Have you gotten out much?
So so I got a food list going right now. So my favorite food so far down here that y'all just do phenomenal, just a great, simple red beans and rice. Truth be told, depending on who does it and how it's done, it can be glorious. So, so I would say honestly, my favorite restaurant so far right now, it's tough, man. It's tough. Because I'm still trying to get through that list entirely. Yeah. So I feel like I don't jump the gun too soon, but
there's some great places with red beans and rice here, and I love, my wife is from New Orleans, so she cooks once a week. Lets them, takes those beans, lets them soak all night, and she won't use anything but camellia beans. It always has to start with camellia beans. She soaks them all night, and she's got all these little secrets to it. So,
it's an art,
solid, man. Yeah, and we could talk food all day, but that's cool. Yeah, I wanted to get that out of the way. And red beans is kind of a great food. It's a legume, so it's high in protein. It's got your carbs. Yeah. So it satisfies you. So, it comes with sausage, cornbread, and a lot of other stuff. But
exactly, yeah, yeah. Meets all your needs that you need.
Yeah, I like your pick there. Okay, all right. So now we all know how the cuisine is here. How a lot of these guys grow up eating. They eat their red beans and rice with fried catfish or grilled sausage, smoked sausage and all that. When you first arrived in Baton Rouge last year, what were some of the strategies that you relied on to develop the trust and the buy-in with the team?
So it was literally the moment that we got down here, listening to them on what was the complications, like what was our shortcomings. What do they want to see better, especially on nutrition? And some of them a lot of them said they don't know. So I had to actually give them some exposure of like, okay, so what time were you guys eating pregame meal? What time, as far as like, what do you guys typically have for dinner? What do you typically like for dinner? What does your mom or your grandmother or your auntie always made that you like to eat consistently? What's a non-negotiable food that you gotta have on game day? just getting all those tips and getting all that information from them, and then just trying to plan around, okay, what can I give to them? How can I talk to our culinary team and chefs and where we're traveling to kind of get that built in, but then also manipulate the ingredients solid enough so that way it can be beneficial for what we're trying to execute, what we're trying to get done. So because you can get it done, especially based on, you know, paying respect to the culture, to the cuisine that they're that they love to eat and they have always ate. It's just all about the timing of it. That's it. And how you prepare it.
All right. So I know relationships are critical, especially someone in your position, because you got to develop that trust because of, you know, kids grow up eating certain foods. And just like me, man, I love any type of legume. I grew up eating it, you know? So, and my kids, whether it's white beans, red beans, whatever, I love them. But I also like ham hocks and sausage and all that in it too. All right. So developing those relationships is critical when it comes to communication and really getting down into the nitty gritty with some of the more difficult kids. All right.
Yep.
How did you do that? How are you still trying to develop those relationships with those difficult kids?
Exactly. And that you said it right there. How are you still building that relationship? Because you're never done building it. You know, you're never done building it. You're never done getting their trust. You're never done helping them through certain processes that they need to complete for the outcome you're trying to get. It's just literally being authentic with them, being honest with them, being just realistic with them on their expectations and their outcomes, and actually just coaching them through whatever it is that it may be throughout life, because you're trying to build them as a man as well, for one thing, right? And then the second thing is, as far as like when it comes to them to being able to have them put their guard down, because they're trying to navigate life and they have their guard up so much that essentially it's hard to break it down. It's hard to break it down. And in order to break it down, you have to just be present.
Yeah.
They have to know you. They have to know you. Yeah. Yep. So, and that's why I bring my family around. That's why I bring my kids around a lot. Yeah. And that's why I just tell them, like, when they see me, even when I'm having a difficult day, you know what I'm saying? As far as like when I'm coming in, I'm here, and I'm letting them know, like, as far as like, it's not about woe is me or anything like that. It's just that I'm here. I'm for you guys, no matter what's going on. Right. And that's what you got to do as a man. You got to execute everything you're trying to establish and get done throughout that. So that's more so how my relationship with them is more so is being authentic and being present.
Yeah. And you're right there in the weight room too. So that helps. That's huge, man, because you're in there while they're training. You're going up and down the aisle, I'm sure.
Yep.
Practice, training room. So that's huge. All right.
Yes,
so
sir.
that leads me to my next question. And I know this from working there for so long. Collaboration is critical. And it's critical in any team setting. It doesn't matter if it's football, baseball, or basketball. Okay. So what impact have you seen when performance nutrition, sports medicine, strength and conditioning, and this is huge, sports science, all collaborate and work together for a common goal? How critical is that relationship?
It's everything, because if one thing falls, the whole building blocks can crumble, you know? So you have to have everything solid, even though over time, even though nutrition has been seen as something as far as that's like, okay, I can eat whatever I wanted to, and I've gotten this far. Your luck only goes for so long before genetics catch up to you. You know, everyone has that clock for when what you ate so long, your genetics is going to actually have an action. All right. So therefore, you may not be able to be what you consume on a consistent basis may not be able to be something that is conducive to what your success is. Our communication has to be key, because of the fact that whatever I give to them as far as from a nutrition standpoint is to plan for the outcomes that each one of these departments need to see. And then that's for one thing. The second thing is also is to plan to have a designated reaction or response to whatever stimulus that they're providing as well. So that's why you have to have the communication. You have to have communication pre-surgery, post-surgery. You have to have communication as far as for training sessions, modalities, and then also the training phases of the season. You have to have the proper nutrition outcomes for sports science as well. So depending on what they're trying to do for their testing, okay, what interventions do you need to have any interventions in place, or what variables you need to actually control for as well for them to be able to make sure that, okay, this is what they're seeing if they're testing any like max velocity, speed, anything like that. And then was that done? Is it done in a segment or in a session that is in relation to that's not detrimental to their recovery from the training session stimulus that also the coaching that Coach Flynn is trying to actually establish as well. So we're trying to, I got to piece all that stuff together to make sure they have what they need. If they're testing in between, okay, give them something so that way their bodies can have something from that training session to be able to test or to be able to go to now their treatment modalities that they need to go to for rehab.
Yeah. So you touched on something I want to talk about later, but you were talking about pre-surgery, post-surgery. So if you know that a young man is scheduled for a procedure, you're employing methods prior to that surgery prophylactically, knowing that that is going to benefit him, and you're not going to be reactive and wait
Correct.
until that person is out of surgery. You're implementing protocols prior to that surgical intervention because you know that coming out of that, he's going to be better off.
Exactly. Yes, sir. I try to think through 48 to 72 hours beforehand, before the surgery takes place, then also give them what they need. Abby Smith Ryan had a great paper on that for nutrition for rehabilitation as well. As far as like how they need to actually, because you got to know them on how they're going to eat their certain foods, so you know what foods they're going to eat that have those antioxidants and also other nutrient profiles that is beneficial for their rehab, right? And for their surgery and for pre-op and post-op. So it's knowing them, and it's also thinking that through so they can have from 48 to 72 hours out those plates and also those supplements in place, established throughout that timeline before surgery and also after.
I'm going to regress here just for a moment because, when I first started in strength and conditioning, there were, no performance nutrition departments, and everything that we did, we had to do it ourselves or it didn't get done. And, and I wasn't, I was a health and physical education major that loved the weight room and read everything I could possibly do to help us and our teams get better. But the benefit of having someone with your level of expertise is amazing because, whenever a topic would come up, I'd call the staff in. I'd say, all right, everybody, grab your books. In fact, this is when Paul was here. We were fixing to play. We were opening the 2011 season with Oregon, and that's Oregon was rolling then, and they were ranked really high, and so this was months before the season. Coach Miles called us in. He said, "I want you to look at different means of conditioning because going into that game, the opening game of the season, I want to be the most well-conditioned team for, the tempoed offense because nobody was really doing it but them. And it's important that, we focus on that all summer." So I was like, yes, sir. So we called in the staff and Paul. So what I did is I gave every person on the staff a role in this, whether, it was calling everybody that had played Oregon and different strategies that they implemented and et cetera, all the way down the line. And Paul's project was to look into it nutritionally and what supplements and et cetera we could use leading up to that contest. Okay. So now they got somebody like you that does it with an incredible level of expertise. So it's cool to hear you say that. So
man, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. All right. So let's get on a hot topic here, and that's nutrition. I mean, not nutrition, but hydration. And we all know that when you're in the South, it can get warm, man, and it stays hot.
Mm-hmm.
It stays hot year round. So even in October and sometimes in November, you have some unseasonably hot days. How do you manage that, and what are some strategies that you've implemented to help with hydration for practices and competition?
Man, Coach Moffitt, this place here had changed everything that I knew about hydration. I'm telling you right now. So you have to, and having Nathan Lamone here as well, which is our sports science research associate, has been very beneficial and a godsend. So with that being said, so there's two parts to it: the acclimatization and the acclimation of the actual student athlete, where they're coming from, how much exposure have they had to this type of environment, right? So that's one part to it. The second part to it is their daily and consistent habits already established, leading to that actual exposure and leading to actually that type of practice out in the heat, right? And planning for that type of environment there. So with that being said, some things that we had implemented. So we've been using over this even course of this camp, if you will, and this has been the hottest camp in history, I feel like, in Louisiana. And you've seen it, Coach Ma, I feel like it's been unreal. It's been unreal, man. It's been reaching 120 degrees outside day after day after day, with also a 90% plus humidity, like, and just a UV index of 9 to 10. Like, it's been unreal. So, and that wet bulb, when that wet bulb is saying 98 to 100 degrees at 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning, look, man.
I know, look, and the rule is if it's 88, you're not supposed to do anything or something. And it was if that were the case, we'd never practice.
Oh my God, Coach Mop. And no, it's like, no, you got to get those guys exposed to it. So as much as, and it's about being strategic. So having that communication, that team here, and us communicating on how much time they're being exposed to it with sports medicine. And then also even the exposure that Coach Flint did throughout the summer as well, at particular time frames, to get them out running, doing sprints and conditioning in that particular exposure of that heat in the hottest point of the day, one day out of the week, also was a great aspect to it. So we've been using core temp pills like during camp, just to monitor certain guys who have a very high sweat rate, and also who are our guys that we actually have to ensure that their hydration, either through sickle cell trait that they have, or just from prior history of excessive cramping, if you will. Having that, and then also using sweat patches as well to monitor how much electrolyte and how much volume is within that sweat. Right. And then also, and then just looking at me, this is why the presence is key. You have to look at how much fluid they actually are losing and how much fluid they're actually throwing on them, because actually throwing fluid on them as well is a part of the cooling process that you need to actually have. And that's, and some say, okay, most will argue that, well, it's all about what you drink too, but that's why we got those ice towels and things like that, because you got to keep that core temperature down. And actually, and that can give you some type of response. And you've played out in this heat, you know what it's like. Just throwing some cold water on you can actually shake you up a little bit and get you back. Okay, let's go. I got to keep going. Keep going. So having that there, and then also it just monitoring every single person based on their body weight, based upon what they're doing pre and post, as far as in our weight scales here that Scott had established here within sports science, and then checking in at breakfast time to see what their fasted weight is, or what their post meal weight is as well, because I kind of want them, I changed that up from the first year to this year. I want them to consume, and I want them to have whatever they need to see what their weight is prior to the actual, as far as practice, right before meetings start. And then giving them, as far as, okay, this is what their weight is, this is how much fluid you need to have every single 30 minutes, an hour prior to we get outside, correct? And then also, this is how many highs you need, this is how much right stuff you need, based upon also the exposure of what we've seen in your sweat loss and your solute loss throughout summertime. So that's been some strategies to implement there. And also they got in their locker room. Like one thing that me and the nutrition staff did was actually make in there, this is how many water bottles you need. This is how many mahas you need from a baseline level. We will manipulate it from there. This is what your baseline level is based upon your body makeup and your composition, how much you need to have. And this is just your baseline again. And then from having that individual just standing, knowing them, how much you need to consume and how much electrolytes you need to consume from there, and how much they're weighing out to how much we need to know how much to replace, and how can we do that strategically so that way it doesn't interfere with their nutrition and their food consumption also. And we got to put that in there and take that consideration too, because all that adds up and all that helps you actually rehydrate and absorb fluid too. You got to have those carbohydrates and also sugar exposed and available to be able to bring that into the muscle cells too. So that's something that we just constantly did day to day and made sure that we didn't run into a red line. Like we did a phenomenal job even with maintaining and mitigating lean muscle mass loss throughout camp and throughout also the season, but then also ensuring that we are mitigating and we're preventing those as far as those soft tissue injuries, if you will, throughout that time in that phase of that season too. And I don't want to toot my horn, but I think we keep doing a phenomenal job, because even with that exposure, that heat, that level outside of 125 degrees and that amount, those soft tissue injuries was pretty non-existent, truth be told.
Yeah, and that exposure has a long-lasting effect, and if you're not working to keep those systems in place and making sure that you're on it on a daily basis, it catches up with you, and then it takes more time to recover once you bottom out. It takes more than
exactly.
You can go get an IV and you can rehydrate, but the long-lasting effect lasts a lot longer than what you would imagine, especially with repeated exposures to that heat. So here's a question that I have, and a lot of times coaches will say, hey, and this would be like Friday before a game, so, hey, it's supposed to be hot tomorrow at Auburn, which is always hot at Auburn. We got to make sure our guys hydrate. I've always been from the school of thought that Friday, if you're trying to begin hydrating for a big game on Friday, you're behind, man.
Exactly.
Right?
Too late.
It's
too late.
How do you manage that throughout the week? Like, ensuring, and, you've gone over it to a great deal, but like how much communication between you and the team is there to say, hey guys, you've got to consume more fluids? Like how do you handle that? Is it in meetings? Is it after practice?
Yes, sir. So Coach Flick gives me time to actually address the team after whenever I need to say anything. So Mondays, that's the offense defense as far as split group. I try to get, depending on what Coach Flint has to touch on, as far as information, I get them primed to get the thought process together. So Monday they start up, right? And then when they have also their lift groups, then Wednesday and Thursday, as far as depending on where they're at, that's another conversation standpoint. I'm always talking to those guys. After Monday, I send out a text message to also the captains, and then also as far as to those guys that maybe throughout camp that I was like, hey, based upon what me and Nathan saw from our just research of the team and just seeing what we're doing as far as with them, I contact them individually.
Yeah.
And stay on them individually every single day, just to make sure they're staying on top of everything as well. It's not about badgering them or just staying down their throat, but it's just about like, hey, big fella, like, hey, you gotta make sure you staying on top of that. How much you had today? Did you weigh yourself? You got to also take responsibility for yourself. How much you weigh today? So it's just they can just spot check themselves as well and take that responsibility, have accountability too, so they can care about their health also in that situation and not rely on somebody else. So it's a day to day. It's every single day. Then that way by Friday, because by Friday it's easy. It's a controlled environment. By Friday, I can give them what they need every single meal by the time they start here and get here for team meeting, and then leading up for every single meal snack leading to the game on Saturday. All that stuff is done by itself.
And you said something that was very meaningful. You said big man. because people don't understand when you say big man, you're talking about a large human being. And so my next question was, what are the key nutritional considerations for, or how do football players and football teams differ from other sports when you consider the nutritional demands? And it's the same whether you're eating food or drinking fluids. A 330-pound man requires more fluid than a 100-pound gymnast. It's not even close. Or a 185-pound corner. They're two different guys. So there's never a one size fits all. So how are the nutritional demands, how do they differentiate between football and some of the other sports? Because you oversee all the sports there. How are those sports different in the different areas?
So thank God that my primary baby is football, right? The other dietitians, they are phenomenal and they oversee the other sports. All I do is support them on whatever they need as far as to get their overall job done. And me and Kayla tag team that. And Kayla is our director of performance nutrition for the Olympic side, correct? So we just tag team and make sure our team have what they need to execute their job successfully. So with that being said, it differs basically. Just position to position is different too in football.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to their level of exposure to the type of environment, their training age. They're also just the expectation as far as what the coaches see and their demand of how much in their snap count, their expectation of what they're going to be playing in as far as the amount of time and the amount of snaps they're going to take on the weekend on Saturday. And then also with that being said too, their developmental stage as well. So, because if we got freshmen that our freshmen are starting, they're going to require more because, and also it's a mental perception level to it as well. You got to take in consideration because just even their state anxiety of what they're looking at in the game and developing, they're going to use a lot more and burn a lot more because they're over processing and they're moving more in space than what they actually probably need to. Yeah. So with that being said, the calories is always going to be king and queen because that's your fundamental level. It's always basic. That's always baseline level. The amount of fluid and the balance of the electrolytes is also going to be basically those nights to it, and it's going to be a sidekick to it because you got to have the amount of how much fluid you have. Doesn't mean anything if you don't have the proper electrolyte profile that you're trying to super saturate that student athlete for in preparation to competition, right? So you got to make sure that they're constantly having electrolytes with their fluid all day long. All right, especially in the earlier stages of the season when it's severely hot, and they have that, correct? So you have that, and then also it's about now you got to control because their bodies are undergoing so much stress, it starts to reduce their appetite. All right, because you're having so much blood flow go to the body to try to recover because of the physical demands and also the contact and also everything else that is trying to recover, right? So that blood flow is going elsewhere in the body to try to send signals and or stimuli that it needs to take place in order to rehab and recover everything from what one is going through, from physical contact and then also just from physical demand as far as from training and also practice, right? So all that you got to consider. You have to consider also from the minor details of their nutrient intake. So what we have for our supplementation, vitamin D, omega-3s, all right, magnesium, 3 and 8, or glycinate. And then also we throw in SPMs, specialized pro-modulators in there. And then with that being said, having just those levels and that fundamental level there, and then tweaking it based upon what their labs tell us, what their lab assessment tells us. That's why we got to have those labs done because it's all about the consistent health of that player for them to actually for player availability to actually be available and be existent. Because if they are consistent choices, or if they're missing their supplements of what they need and their bodies is in a compromised position, then it's more exposed or more likely to get injured. and it's more likely to be an injury that they cannot come back from in a season. So that's that if it's non-contact related, and that's we're trying to prevent hands down, trying to prevent as much as possible. So there's going to be some differences there because of the physical demands and the physical contact that's always been exposed throughout the entire week too, because we practice hard, especially on Attitude Tuesday and Grit Wednesday. You practice hard. You have to, because that's the level of intensity and level of competition we have every single weekend.
Attitude Tuesday and Grit Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. All right. So you mentioned the electrolytes, and y'all use My High, correct? You like
Yes, sir.
My High. Yeah.
Love it, man. I love it. I love it because the flavor profile too, that's hard too to have the flavor profile of certain electrolytes. Matt Flynn did a phenomenal job developing that because of the sense of you can shoot it back, and it has just the amount of ratio of sugar in there as well to help also uptake those electrolytes within the muscle cells too, especially in the state of when they're outside in your training. You can just shoot that back immediately, and you can go ahead and move everything where it needs to be to rehydrate efficiently throughout that situation and throughout that type of practice or throughout that competition and physical activity.
Yeah, and it's it tastes so good. The lemon lime was always was my favorite, and so shout out to Matt Flynn and his electrolyte product, My High, because it's a great product. Okay, so moving on. So these players, because there's literally millions of dollars on the line with some of these players' performance, and there's immense pressure on those guys to meet certain weight and body fat composition standards based on those positions. How can this pressure, coupled with underlying mental health challenges, impact an athlete's approach to weight loss or weight gain? And because I was always of the belief that when there's so much on the line in collegiate athletics, if a young man knows that he's got to keep his weight at a certain level in order to be effective, and he overeats or undereats, there's underlying issues there, just like it would be if it was some other vice, because food, or food, and whether you're eating your calories or drinking your calories like me with milkshakes, it makes you feel good. So what strategies are there that you use when working with hard gainers or guys that struggle with being overweight?
So, and that's the thing too. It's all about how you convey the message, right? So with motivational interviewing as well, and seeing what stage that those athletes are in, you're essentially trying to meet them where they are to also make sure a healthy line of communication is coming across, so that way it's not positioning pressure on them. All right. So with that being said, for these guys, one thing is that I'm trying to teach them and educate them when it comes to being within a particular weight range, right? Starting there. So that way it's in relation to actually their health outcomes. If you're within this boundary, all right, yes, this is your target weight. All right. But if you're within this range here, within that, right? So 1.5% above or below, correct? If you're within this range here, then you're putting your position and you're positioning your body for you to be at its most healthy standing, so that way it can perform and it can recover. All right. When you start going outside of that, you have to be aware and mindful that you need to actually do better with your choices. So that way you can make sure that you're doing what you can, the most you can, to make sure that you're healthy when it's all said and done, so that you're available when it's all said and done, and doing the best there. So that way you can recover, because you have to stay within that to make sure that you're staying on track to actually, see if you are consuming enough or consuming not the right things consistently. All right. at the wrong times as well.
Right.
So that's something that you have to, that's the most strategic thing that we implement, is obviously the relationship and presence is there, but then also just how we convey the message day to day and how they see the information, so that way they can just be mindful of what they're doing. It alleviates the pressure. It takes the pressure off. So now they're just seeing it as like, this is just something that I'm just doing just to make sure that I'm good,
Right.
that I'm just available. I can make sure that I can just be out there and play. I can absorb contact. I can give contact in an effective manner, and I'm putting my body in a position in its most healthy state, much as possible. Because I want to take off the pressure off of them as much as possible. That is my goal. So that way we're taking it out of that position to where it's causing some type of a dysfunction in their mental attitude towards health and towards their weight. So we're trying to take that away as much as possible. How we expose information and how we give the information is all very important.
Yeah, and many times mental stress has just as much of a negative impact on the body as the physical stress. That,
Exactly.
We all know that football elicits on the organism when you have parental pressure, NIL responsibilities, academics, coaching changes, play, playing time, all of that stuff is stress. And so whether it's mental stress or physical stress, it all plays a role in how those guys consume food and perform.
Yes, sir. Then this day and age of the student athlete too is much different.
Yeah.
It's much different. So I can imagine having all these factors and all these stresses that they have, because they have and they're exposed to it every single second, every single minute, because of what they have in their hands, social media, and what they're trying to do, and they're trying to live more than what's expected of them to be now, So that's just something as well that we're trying to take into consideration. And also we're trying to learn right now too, because no one has it figured out yet, because there's so many different things that's being developed and also implemented too.
Okay, great. So I want to take a moment here to pause the podcast and say a word about our friends at Perch. Crafted at MIT, this cutting-edge weight room performance monitoring system deploys compact 3D cameras to effortlessly monitor and improve performance. Perch enables velocity-based training and passively captures real-time velocity of the barbell and the body with power data, revolutionizing your workouts, preventing injuries, and saving the coach precious time while in the weight room. Perch is portable, easy to set up, and incredibly user-friendly. Say goodbye to pre-workout hassles, wearables, broken strings, etc. With Perch, you optimize every rep, every set of every training session effortlessly. Now, back to Dr. Frakes. Okay, so sleep. Sleep is essential for muscle recovery and growth. And, I tell parents all the time that kids, they don't get strong when they lift. They don't get fast when they run. They get strong and fast when they sleep at night and recover. So how can insufficient sleep compromise an athlete's muscle mass, his strength, and his performance? And in addition to that, negatively impact their body weight? What role does sleep play in these factors?
Well, the more sleep you have, the better the hormonal response for muscle protein synthesis to take place. All that is saying as far as is that in order for you to absorb and utilize protein, absorb and utilize carbohydrates, and then also absorb and utilize particular nutrients, it has to be done during the anabolic stage of sleep. And for those responses to take place the next day and the catabolic stage of performance, that stage there is even affected throughout the previous days of sleep, not days of sleep. So you have to have consistent sleep to have consistent outcomes. So with that being said, and you can't catch up and make up for it. By that time, if you're trying to catch up and make up for sleep the day before, it's done and over with. It's over with. You decrease your chances as far as have a successful outcome for performance sake, And what does the literature say? I think anywhere between between 40 to 60% or even more, plus possibly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and don't quote me on that, but that's something that that you have to take in consideration. So with that being said, that's why you got to have so much sleep, because then also what you do nutritionally is affected, and how you utilize things is affected based on that. If the duration and the sleep latency is not in a particular time frame for your body to adequately utilize what it needs to, you're not going to recover. And you're putting yourself more in a position to actually get injured. It increases the chances of injury risk also detrimentally. So,
yeah, you can't. And, you touched on it there. That was going to be my next question was, can you catch up on sleep? And you can't. You missed an opportunity. It's just like work, man. If you miss 8 hours of work on one day, you've missed that opportunity to make it up, because of all the metabolic functions that take place during that rest period. You can't make up for it with another 8 hours of extra sleep. You missed out on that opportunity. And I know it for a fact, because, I wear a smartwatch, and on days when I wake up in the morning and I look and it says I had a great night's sleep, I know that my workouts, and it's not a placebo effect, I can go longer, I can go harder when I've gotten 7 or 8 hours of sleep versus 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And I know it because of my smartwatch. My average heart rate is lower, my max heart rate is lower, my speed, because I ride a bike, my average speed in identical rides is faster. I just perform better when I have rest. And a lot of it has to go into my recovery. And so,
yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about pregame nutrition, man. And as in my role at the Moffitt Method, one of the most often asked questions I get from high school coaches is about pregame meals.
Yep.
What are your recommendations for calories and then macronutrients, carbs, fats, proteins, for football players? And how can coaches distribute the intake of carbs, fats, and proteins to optimize the energy levels, while teams are on the field?
Yep. So pregame specifically, right? So depending on the time of the actual competition, depending on the time of the game. So when it comes into a night game, I love night games because, man, even if they have times where they don't feel like, as far as eating, just waking them up in the particular day, as far as to get them on a particular schedule and strategically exposing them to different meals, as far as breakfast, lunch, pregame meal, so 3 meals before the even game actually starts.
Mm-hmm.
The more opportunity, and actually the more that you're going to have success with them consuming enough for the actual competition, right? If it's an 11 a.m. game like the one we have this upcoming weekend, that's a different story. Then you have to make sure that Thursday's solid, Friday's phenomenal, and pregame meal on that upcoming, as far as at 3 to 4 hours beforehand, is everything. Because morning times, people don't feel like eating sometimes. And you have to make sure that you have what you can get them exposed to. One thing I try to make sure they try to do is try to consume their fruit first, get their palates working, get their digestive system working, get them to the ability to where, as far as, okay, hey, I have some sugar in me. Okay, I got some sweet tasting in my palate right now. All right, I'm ready to make this omelet. All right, I'm ready to make, as far as the shrimp and grits. All right, I'm ready to eat these pancakes. And this is for those 11 a.m. games. Yeah. For those night games, our pregame meals is simple. I like to do mine's 3 hours and 15 minutes beforehand. Some people do 4 hours before, which is absolutely fine. Whatever you want to do, whatever is best for you. But you want some things that are easily digestible, as far as when it comes to your carbohydrates, right? So that can be essentially mashed potatoes, that can be corn, that can be spaghetti and meatballs with marinara sauce. That can be as far as your sandwiches that you can build as well. That can be an assortment of whatever fruit you want: watermelon, melon, mango, pineapple, strawberries, grapes, kiwi, whatever may be there. And then also, this is where your fruit juices come in too. So I try to also have that available for them, those pressed juices for them too, to sneak that into. And then also Powerade as well, so they can have that with their meals, because you're trying to essentially saturate as much carbs and saturate as much sugar available. So that way we are trying to preserve as much glycogen, and then also create more as well, store it within the muscle throughout the day. So that's where you got to be strategic on what's being offered and what's available. And I'm with them in those meal times, so that way I can actually help coach them through. If they're not eating enough, okay, well, how about you get a few more rolls here, take this Powerade, take this right stuff as well. And then when we get there, I'm going to give you another fruit smoothie that is basically anywhere between 90 minutes to 120 minutes as well. So basically hour and a half to 2 hours before the actual kickoff too. So that you can stick those smoothies in there. If they don't eat a lot, they eat enough to what they can, get that moving and digested, and then have them sip on a smoothie as they're getting prepared and ready for the match and for the game. So
yeah, I like the fact that you said 3 hours and 15 minutes, because forever we ate 4 hours before the game, and when we would get to the stadium, the guys were hungry.
I know.
Yeah, looking for, just like stuffing food in their mouth. So I like that. I really do. I like that. Now, what about at halftime?
Yep, halftime we have a message. So my fellow Michelle and my assistant, man, I'm so thankful for them, man, Katie, because it is a team effort. And actually, the strengths, the athletic development staff helps us as well. Athletic training helps us as well. We try to get as much in them as much as possible. So we have, and everyone, they can whatever be mad. I still do this, but I give them Rice Krispie treats. Yeah. I give them as far as some pickle spears, pickle shots as well, pickle juice shots. I give them grapes as well throughout that time, bananas. I still give them I give them nitrate shots during that time too. Ooh. I give them as far as peanut butter and jelly. So still give them Uncrustables. I'm not making peanut butter and jellies all day long. Yeah. Just not. Yeah. That's over with. So we have the means to get it. So we're going to do it. And then also we put together we super saturated electrolytes again. So I like having body armor, because you can manipulate the sodium content with the amount of potassium that's available in there, right? So I just put more sodium in there to go with that excessive amount of potassium in there, and actually it gives it a great profile throughout that situation as well. And then that was something that was done, and you know about it, like the little boost that we make as well, man. That right there, boost. That's everything. That's everything. So we're giving them all those things there throughout that entire halftime. Guys don't like eating too much at that time, but I tell them, y'all got to take something, man. Even if it's just the pickle shot, even if it's just the pickle spears, even if it's just the grapes, even if it's just the fruit snacks, take something, man. Take something.
Yeah. And I know that the boost works, because like if you're playing Auburn and you're at that place and it's hot as fire out there, the boost made me feel better, and nobody's sitting on me. I'm standing on the sideline. So yeah, the boost. The boost was critical. So what about post game and Attitude Tuesday after practice, post practice, and post game and after an Attitude Tuesday practice? How important is nutrition on days like that?
Yeah, so our meal check-in, we have our check-in meals throughout the week, every single day, Monday through Thursday, right? Because Friday they're with us, so we don't need to check. But at dinner time, at that time, that's where I try to make the menu on Tuesdays, and Katie has taken this over for me now to connect with the chefs throughout the week to make sure that the menu is taken care of, and that the menu reflects kind of on that dinner time what they want to eat. So in relation to, in respect to what the other student athletes want as well. So it's a challenge. But at that time, Tuesday, I try to make it to where I want to see what is the actual foods that that our team is going to eat, because that's a very important practice day throughout the week, because that's the most that they're going to get as far as in their workload throughout that week. So that recovery and that performance, that recovery for the next day, Wednesday, because Wednesdays are longer practices, and it's a gritty day, and you got to get them through it, and they got to attack it those Wednesdays, because it's a very important install practice as well, in a way that they need to make sure that they're executing it, successfully. So that meal Tuesday night is very important, and then also leading to Wednesday. Post-game meal for me, I try to make sure also that, again, it's exposure to foods that they enjoy the most, so that way they can eat. Because, again, you don't feel like eating too much. So we'll have, like this past weekend, we had the Big 50 burgers from Burger IM. Yeah, so we had the Big 50 burgers, had a side of wings, had a Caesar salad on the side of it. And then they'll have maybe some smoothies if you need to, as well there too. And that's a trick that we'll have for the flight, especially depending on that commute time leading to the actual airport, all that stuff. So post-game meal is very important too, because you need to eat as much as possible to recover all the damage they've done in that competition. So
okay, so we've been on here a while, and we've covered just about everything that, because I wanted to cover questions that coaches ask me all the time, because you're an expert in this field. But I know that you've done a lot of work while you were in school and since you've gotten out of school on concussion recovery. Mm-hmm. And whether it's LSU or Jack and Nathan, they've all done a lot of work in subconcussive blows, and then the hard hits to the head. Can you discuss what you've learned and what role nutrition and or some micronutrients and supplements, and what role they play in recovery?
Yep. So concussion, I always want to make sure that the nutrition team is part of the actual return to play and a part of the actual evaluation process, right? Because with that being said, it's a metabolic injury. It's a metabolic cascade of events, right? So if it's a metabolic cascade of events, then there's some dysfunction and some shearing as far as some axonal injury and shearing some neurons. And then also with that being said, that there is some I'll say this, it's some improper usage of electrolytes for the cells that actually communicate and fire right, correct? So with that being said, that's where nutrition has to take place. So when they're in the evaluation process, the faster that you implement something, that you implement, carbohydrates, that you implement electrolytes, and that you can implement as much as possible if you can, and if you're clear to do so, creatine. The faster you get that in throughout even just from the evaluation is not diagnosed yet, the better the outcome will be, and the faster the return to play. So with that being said, is trying to address the acute stage as much as possible within the first 30 minutes to 2 hours, right? And give them that cocktail or some supplementation there. Yeah. So you have to address the acute stage of it, even before they diagnose it, all right? And then also, even if they're diagnosed, even if they're in the stage of the evaluation, then give them some electrolytes at that time. Give them a Gatorade or a Powerade or something at that time, right? Just so that way they can have that before it turns into that hypo, as far as glycolytic process, right? Or that hypo stage, or where it's not sufficiently using carbohydrates, correct? Because if it is not doing so, then that's where you got to actually tweak, okay, what is your day-to-day as far as intake in? So that's where now I'm throwing in 6 to 9 grams of omega-3 fatty acids in there with a 2-to-1 ratio of DHA to EPA, making sure there's much more DHA available, so that way the cells can continue to heal itself and utilize that. And I go so aggressive on that because it helps them as far as on that with that recovery process there, correct? trying to make sure that we establish as much as possible. If they're snacking on things, they have as much as far as like having those trail mixes available, having those cashews available, having those as far as like having as much salmon, fish around them as much as possible. They try to have that at least twice a day, once or twice a day with the omega-3s, and then having even those rehab shakes that I'm making, I'm sneaking those omega-3s in there. Yeah, I'm sneaking those electrolytes in there. I'm cleared now to give them throughout the return to play as far as that creatine in there as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm going aggressive. It can fall anywhere between 20 to 30 grams throughout the return to play for creatine, if you will, depending on the size of the individual too. So it can have that there as well. And then on having to making sure that they're having daily vitamin D intake, that they're having their protein intake is up to par, and that because it's a metabolic cascade of events, we don't know as far as if it's interfering with even the recovery process from the actual game that it happened in, right, or that practice it happened in. So now, are you not metabolizing, utilizing amino acids adequately in order for you to actually recover too? So I'm trying to making sure I'm staying 2 grams per kilogram of protein in there, with having with leucine being at least 3 grams per serving in there too. So having all that in there, and then putting as much antioxidants available. I sneak black currant in their shakes as well throughout the recovery process. I'll make sure that they have as much as possible every single meal. I will tell them, bro, eat as much fruit as possible throughout this entire snacking process. Every 2-3 hours, have as much fruit as much as possible. And then if you don't feel like eating because it interferes with the appetite, right, then stop at Smoothie King or Tropical Smoothie and get you a smoothie to take place of that. But you still have to have something. But just get that if you can. Okay, so we'll have that available too, and that's where those SPMs come in too, to make sure that we're having a controlled state of the inflammatory process. So that way we're controlling the inflammation that's taking place within the brain. So that way the recovery process can take place a lot smoother the way it needs to be.
Yeah. So the SPMs, they would realistically take the place of something like turmeric and ginger.
It's just another form of phospholipids. It's just another form of fatty acids, right? So it's just more so it's the same thing as DHA, EPA. It's just another form of that. So I'm just throwing in that alongside with that and increasing that.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Well, great job, man. This is like a gauntlet when you come on here. I fire those questions at you, man, because I know I got to get
it's all love.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate it. I could talk to you all day. I know that you've got other stuff that you've got to do today. Y'all have got a big game coming up, so I didn't want to keep you forever, but I cannot thank you enough for coming on here. I've known about you for a long time. I've respected the work that you've done. Every person that's ever worked with you has had nothing but great things to say about you. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on here. I really do.
I appreciate you. It's an honor to talk to you, man. So ever since even coming into even playing that Bowling Green, we've heard nothing but Coach Tommy Moffitt down there at LSU. So I appreciate you so much, man, and it means a lot, especially coming from you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, can you tell everybody at Football Ops I said hello? Tell Lewis I need me a new pair of shoes. Okay. So pass that on to Big
I got
Lou.
You. I'll tell you right now. I'm about to stop over there. Like, hey, Coach Mama said, give him those shoes, man.
You can follow Dr. Frakes on Instagram and X at Superior Frakes. And then check out his website. It's designforhealth.com/u/Super Frakes. I really liked it. Some neat products that are available for you. So again, thank you very much for being on here today.
Appreciate you, Coach Moffitt. Talk soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast as much as I did, and it's much needed. Regardless of what level or what sport that you play in, you've got to make sure that you're putting in the right things in the body, because you can't out-train a bad diet. Please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, share it with your friends. For more information about the Moffitt Method programs and everything that we have to offer, please visit our website or email us at info@themoffittmethod.fit. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.